We're going to do a review for what's coming up this week. Last week, we're right once again as to the direction of what we're going to experience in the markets. And last week was actually really uh, difficult because we had earnings, we had the Fed speaking, but it was pretty clear that we were seeing a potential increase. And so we got that. So what are we seeing for this week? Well, obviously, with the markets right now, as you can see, they're at minus 0.44% on the ES, and it's just normal to get a nice little pullback. I'm looking at the 5-minute chart right now on the ES on the futures market. So let's step back a little bit. And I don't know if you remember, but last week we talked a lot about being at a certain peak that we had slid down on the daily, and that if we defeat a certain peak, that we may be right up to the next peak. Now, clearly, we're here looking at the futures, and you can see we are at a peak point within, we're at current price 41.15, and you see this line right there at 41.55. So real close to meeting, and you can see the congestion right at that price. So I would anticipate somewhat of a leg down. The question is how many days that's going to go for. Let's switch over a little bit to the SPY to get a little bit of a better look. This is that peak. You can see that it's more pronounced when we look at the futures. It's really nice when we go back and forth because we get a little more clarity, right? So the ES futures prices, I tend to have a little more confidence in, and that's just from experience. Other people look at the other way. Going back to the SPY, there's that peak, obviously not as pronounced. That peak starts at 414 and it goes all the way to 415.90, almost 416. The current price on the close was 411.99, but you can see the price a little bit down since then. The congestion point, as you can see, is pretty clear, right? That we will be seeing a little bit move. That's funny. That's funny. Cancel. Here we go. There you go. So you can see that congestion is right there. Down this line, we're right in it. We should anticipate some kind of drawback. And if we add a little bit of the different things that we look at, so we can look at the RSI, which is an easy thing to look at. That 1470.30 is okay. We are close to being overbought, and so we should anticipate another some leg down. So, obviously the quick question is what happens for the week? Do we overcome? I mean, this is actually a pretty tough 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days worth of congestion. So maybe it's looking like we might be flat here. We've been having a really nice rally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight days up. With one down day. 1, 2, 3 down and 1, 2, 3 up. These were really fast movers. So again, we're right at that level where we should see a little pause, a little digestion, perhaps to continue forward. The news is that for the third quarter, we should see a nice upside. Let's expand this out. Notice that if we're looking at, and this is the SPY, I'm going to switch over real quickly to the NQ. We've been on a downtrend. If we take this number, there's room. If we take this number, there's room. And if we're right here, there's room. And if we go to where that pause is, which likely a little more appropriate, then we should see it come back down like it happened here. It tried to really stay there, and then it came back down. It tried to come back. So it looks like this line is more appropriate. You can see how congestion's been happening right at that line angle, right? You can see how there's congestion right here. It's funny how those peaks really hit right there. So a lot of negatives been happening at this line. It defeats it, doesn't want to go below, it fights it. It bears ring it right back down, trying to fight it, get up to that line. This line, this blue line that you're seeing, that one plays well into it. It looks like we want to be riding this line up or down. As you can see, we're really overextended over this line. So perhaps we see that way down a little bit. So in order to allow this line to come back and catch up, it needs to congest. So we may get a little flat week here. So down day tomorrow, perhaps, or allow the RSI to come back down. And so we can see it. Let's switch over to the QQQ. QQQ, very similar, right? Notice how I have this downtrend. Notice how it's been doing the same behavior, very similar action. The difference is we are in a more bullish position here. Notice there isn't as much of a resistance in the QQQ as we saw in the SPY. We're above the top of the price of this congestion channel. So perhaps we get a break to the top, but I don't think so. I think we get pulled back down here. I think that we'll see a little more congestion. It might get hit a little bit harder perhaps, but let's bet on a down week for QQQ, whereas maybe a flat week for the SPY. That's how I'll be playing it. Obviously, we can change our mind when we see the price action. Notice how interesting we're just right above it on this congestion. There's a little bit more congestion up here, so it gives a little more room maybe to the top side, but let's take a closer look. Yeah, this is a more well-positioned congestion. You can see there's a floor here, it's up above it. So yeah, pretty clear. Let's switch over to the NQ. Yeah, the NQ is showing that pullback, right? Because we're looking at the trading right now. Yeah, very interesting. Maybe come back down to this mid and fight that mid on that candle. And just stay along there. Notice how overbought this has been. Let's pull back a little bit on the weekly. Yeah, can't really say it's a bear flag or bear wedge here, but maybe. Very interesting. It went above this high, defeated, and might get pulled back here. So super interesting price action. There's a little more room on the weekly. So really, if we take a look at the weekly on here, just barely above this down channel, that down channel is very ominous. Might be a bear market, bounce here. Dead cat bounce, it's called. Very interesting. Okay, so jam-packed full week of earnings. I'm interested in OXY, Devon Energy. Big winner for me this year was Devon Energy. Warren Buffett has lowered it up on OXY. We had Exxon report last week. We saw a huge rally in those energy stocks. The dollar weakened a little bit last week, so that we saw a lot of this move forward. Perhaps that'll continue. But remember, we can't see things statically. What we see going next is that perhaps these other nations, mainly Europe, they'll have to increase their interest rates. So there'll be a little bit of a clawback against the dollar. And so that's where we're seeing this weakness. So perhaps it continues a little bit. So overall, the interest rates long-term right now are predicting that we've seen the peak of it all. I have my doubts in that. I think that the creation of so much currency in the last 2 years has been really, really exaggerated. So we should see continued persistence on this increase. I think people always often forget that inflation doesn't mean that commodities are going really high. There's been times in the past where commodities were stable and commodities weren't going crazy, and yet we had inflation. And now we're at a ridiculous pace. So it does help when commodities come down, but maybe there are other factors that we're seeing, i.e. the infrastructure bill that's paying out billions and billions of dollars in certain industries. And so that'll drive prices up in one way or another. Elections are coming up in November. One of the easy plays that the powers that be want to use to stay in power is that they really lubricate the people that they're trying to get votes from. And how do you do that? You pass a bill. So I haven't researched it yet. I saw one little line item, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but it looked like that there's a little bit of a push for a $740 million bill, and that does occur, then and it does pass, and this will markets will really rocket up for a little brief time. So anyway, stay tuned, stay with us, come visit our channel, and happy trading.